The entire army of Israel was sitting under a tree, paralyzed, outnumbered, too afraid to move. The enemy was everywhere. Then one man stood up. He told nobody where he was going, then started a victory that changed everything. I want you all to sit and learn a big lesson from this story. Israel was in the most desperate position it had ever been in. The Philistines had assembled an army so enormous that the Bible describes it as being like the sand on the seashore. They had flooded the land with soldiers, chariots, and horsemen. They had seized Israel's weapons. They had dismantled every blacksmith in the land so that the Israelites could not forge swords or spears. The entire nation was so completely overpowered and so thoroughly disarmed that when they counted the weapons available to Israel for fighting, the number was 2. 2 swords in the entire nation. One belonged to King Saul, the other belonged to his son Jonathan, and King Saul was sitting under a pomegranate tree with 600 men doing absolutely nothing, not because he was a coward, not because he lacked the desire to fight, but because the situation looked so completely impossible that even a king could not find a way forward. But while his father sat under that tree, Jonathan was thinking something entirely different. He turned to the young man who carried his armor beside him every day and said something quietly, almost casually, as if the idea had just arrived. He said, "Come, let us go over to the Philistine garrison on the other side. Not the whole garrison, not with a plan, a strategy, and reinforcements requested. Just let us go over there, just the 2 of them, toward a fortified military position full of trained enemy soldiers." And then he said something that reveals exactly what kind of faith was living inside him. "Perhaps the Lord will act on our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few." Perhaps, just perhaps, the faith of a man who did not need a guaranteed outcome to take the first step, who understood that the Lord is not limited by your numbers, your weapons, who believed that one open act of courageous faith was enough to invite God into a situation that nobody else was moving toward. The armor-bearer looked at his master and said 7 words that should be written on every wall. "Do all that you have in mind. I am with you." No questions, no risk assessment, just absolute loyalty to a man he trusted willingly to walk into the unknown beside him. They climbed toward the Philistine garrison together, and they agreed on a sign. If the soldiers above called down to them, it was a sign that God had given the Philistines into their hands. If the soldiers called them to come up, they would go up. The soldiers called down, "Come up to us, and we will teach you a lesson." Jonathan turned to his armor-bearer and said, "Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." They climbed, on hands and knees, up the rocky face of the mountain, 2 men armed with 1 sword between them, climbing toward a garrison of trained soldiers. And when they reached the top, Jonathan struck down the first man. And his armor-bearer struck down the second. And then the third and the fourth. And by the time it was over, 20 soldiers lay on the ground, in a space barely large enough to hold them. Then God moved. The earth shook. A panic sent by God spread through the entire Philistine camp. Soldier turned against soldier. The confusion was so overwhelming and so sudden that when Saul's watchmen looked out from their position, the entire Philistine army was melting away in every direction. And then Saul's 600 men, who had been sitting under a tree, rose up and joined the pursuit. And every Israelite who had been hiding in caves and hills and holes in the ground came out and joined in. And every Israelite who had previously defected to the Philistine side turned back and fought for Israel. A complete and overwhelming victory, started by 2 men and a perhaps. The armor-bearer whose name nobody knows chose the right man to say yes to. And Jonathan, the young prince who had never been given command of an army, understood something on that day that his father sitting under the pomegranate tree had temporarily forgotten. God does not need a crowd to start a miracle. He needs 1 person willing to climb. The lessons learnt. 600 trained soldiers sat under a tree and waited. 2 men climbed a mountain with swords. The 600 were waiting for the right conditions. Jonathan understood that faith creates the conditions. He did not know exactly what would happen when he got to the top. He only knew that nothing would happen if he stayed at the bottom. Whatever garrison is standing above you right now, whatever mountain feels too steep and too fortified, whatever situation has everyone around you sitting under a tree, waiting for better circumstances, God is still moved by a perhaps. He's still looking for the one person willing to climb. The victory was never waiting for the army. It was waiting for Jonathan to stand up.